So I want to start by telling you a small story. I am at my friend's house. It's just another hangout. It didn't really feel like that before. I mean, we planned it for a very long time, and it always felt like everyone was busy. Still, it's normal, mundane, boring. I mean, we're just watching videos. Sure, it's different, because we're all there, but it doesn't feel like that. We aren't doing anything. If it was the 90s, or the early 2000s, or any other time in the past, we'd surely be doing something. I mean, we'd be watching a movie from a DVD we rented, or listening to music, or singing, or dancing. We'd start a band, or a magazine, or paint our nails, whatever. And then I start thinking that maybe if we didn't have our phones, perhaps if we only had a CD reproductor and a camera, and possibly if our only option was to go out for a walk, then I wouldn't feel like this. I wouldn't be bored. I wouldn't feel so disconnected and so alienated from my friends. And most importantly, we would live. Nostalgia, as a word, was invented by Johannes Hofer to describe a medical condition. It comes from two Greek words, nostos, to return, and algos, suffering. For a while, it was considered a psychological pathology, like, for example, depression. But somewhere around the 19th century, it lost its medical connotation and became a social phenomenon. Nostalgia is at its basis the yearning for the past. We seek familiar items because we want to feel like we once did. We want to remind ourselves that things will be okay because they were okay once. Because of this, nostalgia is especially prevalent during hard times. I mean, firstly, it is a way to escape current feelings and to remind ourselves that things will be better. However, it is also a way to process current feelings. When we get nostalgic, we remember. And when we remember, we process our past, our growth, and our current self. Now, as a society, we also use nostalgia a lot. We tend to cast this feeling of nostalgia towards the past. We remember a world that was better, that was simpler, it was slower, and it was naive. We miss what we had and what we destroyed. And out of guilt, we desperately try to relive it. We build our collective identity around the past, always evolving, but always looking back. I was born in 2007, which places me and everyone currently in high school as part of Gen Z, an extremely diverse generation, and the first one to be digitally native, which means that when I was born and when we were born, things like smartphones, social media, and streaming services already existed. I mean, this is a bit hard to grasp, but for example, when I was born, Netflix as a streaming service was first launched. When I was 1 year old, Twitter was born. When I was 2, Spotify started being a thing, Bitcoin started operating, and when I was 3, Instagram first saw the light of day. Even with all of these advances, Gen Z is stuck in the past. We are nostalgic to a time that we didn't even see. Vinyl, CD, DVD, cassette, MTV, analog cameras, flip phones, MySpace, Nirvana, vintage clothing. Vinyl, for example, has had an extreme and quick resurgence in the last few years. In 2021, income from vinyl sale grew to around 61%, and it reached $1,000 million for the first time since the 80s. Like vinyl, analog camera and photography have also had a big resurgence, with its clients never being older than 25. Flip phones, which weren't even commonly used when most of Gen Z was old enough to have a phone, have also become quite popular. Nokia recently reported an upswing of around 5% in flip phone sales. Now, this isn't a lot, but it is quite big considering that these weren't really sold for quite a while. Now, I know what you're thinking. All generations want to go back to the past. We want to go back to when things were good. The key difference here is that us, teenagers, young people, we weren't really alive to when those good things were still a thing. There's a certain longing for what teenagers used to have. They were cooler, they were funnier, they did things. Nostalgia is extremely relevant in current times. It affects consumer trends, politics, film, TV, music, fashion. There's really no way to escape it. Overall, modern society, and especially young people, seem to have this idea, this attitude that the past was the best thing. We fantasize about a future where we go back to it, where things are like they used to be. Now, the problem isn't really feeling nostalgic. That's normal. The problem is the way we use it to cope with a larger generational issue. We are idealizing with the past. We're stuck. It can be very harmful for society, not only for one person. It can make us go back to very conservative and very damaging points of views and attitudes. This is especially clear on conservative politicians' speeches. During Trump's election, his motto was, "Make America Great Again." This speaks directly to these feelings of nostalgia. And this is only an example. We are making the past the norm or the better future, as I've already said, which can make us go back to things that were detrimental to minorities and people that are often overlooked, which we, as a society, have long overcome. Now, nostalgia can be a tool. It can help us grow. It can help us notice what's gone wrong. It can help us become better people. We are thinking about a mythological past, fantasizing about something subjective and oftentimes inaccurate. We are stuck, but there's another way to use it. Now, teenagers are bored. Teenagers are bored. We have access to whatever we want with just a few clicks, but we don't really feel close to anything. We feel disconnected to our friends, to our family, to school, to the problems in the world, to the real world. Nostalgia is the way in which we desperately try to connect back to it. But we cannot just stay there. Now, let's go a little bit back. I am at my friend's house. It's just another hangout. It didn't really feel like that before. We planned it for a very long time, and it always felt like everyone was busy. But it's normal, mundane, boring. We aren't doing anything. And you know what's next? Except it doesn't really have to be like that, right? We can watch a movie, and it's so sad that we cry all evening. We can listen to music, and we start dancing, and we look really dumb, but we're having a lot of fun. Or we can make cookies, and they turn out kind of burnt, but we did it together. We cannot just stay longing, fantasizing over what we could have had, especially because we can actually have it. It just takes trying. Thank you.